Scary stories to tell if you dare. Collected folklore retold by Joe Oliveto. Followed home. Kate was walking home alone one night. She had to go down a dark country road to get there. Besides Kate, there was no one on the road. As she walked, she began to imagine seeing ghosts and monsters hiding in the shadows. Don't be silly, Kate told herself. There's nothing scary about this road in the daytime, so there's nothing to be scared now either. But soon after, Kate thought she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around and saw a small boy following behind her. He walked slowly. It was too dark to see his face. Kate waved hello, but the boy did not wave back. She decided to keep walking. A little boy couldn't hurt her. As she walked, the boy's footsteps got louder and louder. Kate looked over her shoulder again. Instead of a little boy, now it looked like a teenager was following her. Even though he was still walking slowly, he seemed a lot closer. Your mind is playing tricks on you, Kate said to herself. It's just dark out. You thought you saw a little boy because he was far away. Still, Kate decided to start walking a little faster. She wanted to run, but for some reason she thought that the person behind her would run after her if she did. No matter how fast Kate walked, his footsteps kept getting closer. She looked back again. This time, the figure was heavier. She still couldn't see its face, but it wasn't a teenager anymore. Now, it was a grown man. Kate wanted to believe she was just imagining things, but she wasn't so sure. Can I help you? Kate asked. Maybe the man was lost. Maybe he just needed to ask her for directions. The man didn't answer. He just kept walking, slowly, getting ever so closer. Kate turned back. Now she could see her house at the end of the road. She started to run, but the man's footsteps still sounded closer and closer. When she reached her driveway, Kate spun around once more to look at the man following her. He was an old man now, and he was very, very close. For the first time, she could see his face. He was so thin, he almost looked like a skeleton. The old man glared at Kate with anger in his eyes. Kate dashed inside and locked the door behind her. She was so loud her parents came rushing to find out what was wrong. There's a man following me, Kate said. Her parents searched for almost an hour, but they couldn't find any trace of him. Vanished. Ben and his parents lived in a big farmhouse out in the country. One cold morning, he woke up early to get some wood for the fire. After a few minutes passed, his mother called him in for breakfast. Ben didn't reply though. His mother tried again, and yet she still got no reply. His mother and father were worried. They went outside to look for Ben, but they couldn't find him. They called his name again and again, but he never answered. After a little while, they called the police to come help. Everyone wondered if Ben was kidnapped. For days, people from all over helped look for him. They searched the woods and all around the farm, hoping to find him. No one found anything though. Pretty soon, everyone but the police and Ben's parents gave up. One night, about a week later, Ben's mother was trying to sleep when she heard Ben's voice cry out for her. "Mom," he seemed to say. "Where are you?" The voice was coming from somewhere outside. She rushed out to where she thought she heard it, but no one was there. Then she heard the voice again. "Mom," it said. "I can't find you." "I'm right here, Ben," his mother said. "I'm right here." But she still couldn't see him. She and her husband searched to find where the voice was coming from. But no matter how clear it sounded, they couldn't find Ben. They looked for hours, but There was no sign of him. That happened every night for almost a month. Ben's mother and father would hear him calling for them. They would search the farm for hours, but they never found anything. Each night, Ben's voice sounded more and more distant. Then one day, it stopped. No one knew what happened, and no one ever heard or saw Ben ever again. The Shadow Man. Jake and his family had moved into the old farmhouse by the woods. That's when the bad dreams started. Except, they weren't dreams. His parents said they were, but Jake knew better. The first night in his new home, Jake woke up after his parents had gone to sleep. He tried to move, but he couldn't. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move an inch. That's when he saw the man in his doorway. He was the same size and shape as a man, but instead of clothes or hair or face, he was just a dark figure, something akin to a shadow. Jake tried to call for help, but no sounds would come out of his mouth. The Shadow Man slowly walked into the room. The closer he got, the more Jake tried to scream, but he still couldn't. All he could do was watch the Shadow Man get closer and closer. Finally, the Shadow Man was next to him. It was just a dark figure, but it wasn't flat like a shadow is. It was like there was an empty blank space where a person should be. The shadow looked at him for a few moments. Jake couldn't even close his eyes, and suddenly it disappeared. And as soon as it did, Jake was able to move and talk again. He ran into his parents' room and told them what had happened. Jake's father searched the house. He couldn't find anyone. Every single night, the same thing happened. Jake couldn't explain why, but he felt like the Shadow Man wanted to hurt him. At first, his parents said he was having nightmares. They said he was just getting used to living in a new place. But after a week, Jake's mom decided to bring him to a doctor. The doctor said Jake's mind was just playing tricks on him. He told Jake and his mom that sometimes people wake up and see things like that. It happened to a lot of his patients. The doctor said it would soon go away on its own, but it didn't. One night, Jake asked if he could have a friend sleep over. He thought he'd be less afraid if he wasn't alone. Jake, however, didn't tell his friend about the Shadow Man. He didn't want him to laugh. They stayed up late, telling stories and playing games. Jake simply hated going to sleep now. He always tried to stay awake as long as possible. After a while, though, his friends started to get very tired. They soon fell asleep. Again, Jake woke up in the middle of the night. Like every other night, he watched as the Shadow Man walked into the room and up to his bed. And as always, he couldn't move. But this time, the Shadow Man didn't get all the way to his bed. It disappeared when Jake's friend woke up screaming. Jake's parents rushed in to find out what was wrong. There was a man standing by Jake's bed, his friend said. But it wasn't really a man. It was just a shadow.